There's a place deep in space where no human should go. It doesn't show up on maps, it doesn't answer signals, but it watches. It waits. A ship once landed there by mistake. 4 astronauts, all gone. What they found wasn't a planet. It was a zoo, and they weren't visitors. They were the exhibits, locked in cages, poked, prodded, peeled open like fruit. This is the story the government buried. The log we were never meant to hear. Play it if you dare, but don't say you weren't warned. The ship drifted through space like a silent coffin. No stars around. No light, just black. Commander Reed sat in the control chair, eyes scanning the monitor. They weren't supposed to be here. The mission was mapped months ago. A clean route to Station Theta, a simple cargo drop. But something had pulled them off course. A signal. Soft, low, pulsing every 10 seconds, it didn't match anything in their system. No human signature, not even a known language. Still, it made their ship, the Sycamore, change direction on its own. And then it stopped responding to commands. Dr. Elia leaned over Reed's shoulder, her breath fogging up the inside of her helmet. "This isn't possible," she said, voice shaky. "We're not supposed to be near any planetary mass." But there it was. A massive gray surface, flat and smooth, stretching out in every direction below them. No mountains, no craters, just a perfect sphere, like a giant stone egg floating in the dark. They weren't flying toward it anymore. They were being pulled, slowly, gently, like gravity, but it felt wrong. There was no pressure, no resistance. As if something wanted them down there, and the ship was simply obeying. Juno, the engineer, slammed her fist on the manual override. "The controls are frozen. I can't stop descent." She was breathing fast. Everyone was. Except Pilot Mason, who still tried to joke. "Maybe it's a giant space golf ball," he said, even though no one laughed. The landing was smooth. Too smooth. No shaking, no sound. Just the ship pressing gently onto the surface like a feather on glass. Then, click. Every light inside went red, and the doors hissed open on their own. Outside, the ground was gray and flat. No dust, no rocks, no wind. The sky above them looked normal, but it didn't feel right. There were stars, but they didn't match any maps. Some even flickered in loops. The same blink over and over again like a broken light. Reed stepped out first, testing the air. "Oxygen levels normal," he said. "No toxins." That made Aaliyah's stomach turn. A planet like this should be dead. Why could they breathe? Why did it feel like gravity was being faked? As if it were decided, not natural. As they moved further from the ship, they noticed something ahead. A low hill with a red glow pulsing from inside. It looked like a cave entrance, round and smooth, like the edge of a tunnel. No rocks or dirt, just a hole perfectly cut into the surface, like someone had carved it with a laser. The red light blinked slowly like a heartbeat. Juno scanned the edges. "The walls are too smooth," she muttered. "This isn't natural. It's a door." And just like that, it slid open. Inside, it was cold and silent. The tunnel led downward, sloped gently like a ramp. The walls were silver, but not metal. They felt soft, almost like skin. Every few feet, the red lights blinked again, showing shapes on the walls. Strange symbols that moved when you looked away. At the end of the tunnel, a wide room opened up. What they saw made all 4 stop walking. Cages. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands, each one big as a room, stacked in rows that disappeared into the dark above and below. Some cages were open. Some had smashed glass. Some were fogged over like meat freezers. Others were clear and full. Inside one, a floating jellyfish-like thing tapped on the glass, blinking with a soft blue light. In another, a spider with 12 legs spun webs made of bone. One cage had nothing inside, but the glass was cracked from the inside, as if something had clawed its way out. "I don't think this is a lab," Ilya whispered, staring at a sign etched into the wall in glowing white letters. The letters shifted, twisted, then reformed into words they could read. "Observe. Do not interact." Below that, in red, "Subjects are dangerous." Mason moved closer to a cage that looked empty. Just as he leaned in, something slammed against the glass from the inside. It was too fast to see, just a blur, but it left a smear, blood red. "We need to leave," Reed said, "now." They turned back, Benenti, but the tunnel behind them had vanished. The wall was smooth again, no way out. Then something else happened. A low hum filled the air, like a growl through metal. The lights above flickered. The cages began shifting, gliding sideways on tracks, rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces. One cage slid past them, empty, then stopped. The door to it slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the lights blinked. The air inside looked thick. Too thick. Juno stepped forward and froze. "Why is there a human skeleton inside that one?" she asked. Nobody answered. Because behind them, one of the glass walls started fogging up. A breath from the inside. Then a whisper in Juno's helmet. Just one word. Her name. No one spoke for a long time. The fogged glass didn't clear, but Juno knew what she heard. It wasn't a mistake. The voice inside her helmet had whispered her name like it had known her forever, like it had been waiting. She stepped back, breathing fast, heart pounding. The others stared at the glass. Aaliyah leaned in, wiping at the fog. Nothing moved. But then the speaker in the room crackled. A sound came through. Not words, not music. Just a low growl, dragging across metal like something sharpening its claws in the dark. Mason stepped back from the cage. "We're not alone in here," he said. His voice shook, and this time he didn't joke. The cages around them kept sliding, moving on their own. Some lit up, some made strange sounds. One cage had a thick fog swirling inside, with red blinking eyes watching them from behind the mist. Another cage had mirrors for walls, but when Reed passed by it, his reflection didn't move. It stood still, staring right back at him, even as he kept walking. They found a hallway leading away from the main cage room. Narrow, dim, with metal panels under their feet that clicked when stepped on. At the end of the hallway was a door marked with a flashing red light. It slid open to reveal a smaller room with beds and screens, maybe a lab or break room. There were signs of human life. A crushed water bottle, a torn boot, a jacket marked with the letters USSC, United Space Science Command. This place had seen humans before, and they never left. The team decided to rest. No choice. They took turns sleeping, two awake, two asleep. Reed and Elia stayed up first while Mason and Juno lay on the metal beds. But even with eyes closed, they didn't sleep easy. The ship's lights blinked too often. The room was too quiet. And the cages, Kira, even far down the hallway, kept sliding. Soft mechanical whirs echoed in the walls like the place was shifting itself while they rested. Elia sat by the screen, watching a blinking message that kept trying to play. Encrypted log. Voice playback only. She clicked it. Static. Then a voice. Not from their team. A man's voice, weak and slow. "This is Captain Ivan Kozlov, USSC Explorer 9. If this log plays, you're trapped, like we were. Don't trust the reflections. Don't sleep near the glass. And whatever you do, if the cage door opens on its own, don't go inside. They want you to think it's safe. They want to see you panic." The message ended in a scream, cut short by static. Aaliyah looked at Reed. He didn't blink. "That log was dated over 40 years ago," he said, "but the jacket looks like it was dropped yesterday." Then something hit the wall outside. Hard. A slam that shook the room. Everyone jumped to their feet. Mason grabbed a toolbar like a weapon. Another slam, then dragging, like something heavy being pulled across the metal floor. The door lights turned yellow. Reed moved forward, ready to open it. "No," Juno said. "Wait." The lights flickered. The door didn't open. Instead, the glass window beside it slowly fogged over, just like the cage from earlier. And again, a breath. This time it said Aaliyah's name. She backed up, hand over her mouth. Then something new happened. One of the cages on the monitor screen lit up red. Inside it was a video feed. Not of a creature, not of an alien, but of Elia. She was in the cage, screaming, hitting the walls, blood on her hands, but she was still in the room, standing next to the others. She stared at the screen, frozen in place. "That's not me," she whispered. "That's not me." But the video kept playing, her face full of terror, her hands clawing at the walls. Mason tried to turn the screen off, but it wouldn't stop. Elia's voice echoed from the monitor. "Let me out. Let me out. Let me out." Juno looked around. Something is watching us, testing us, like we're rats in a box. She pulled open a wall panel and found wiring, but not like human tech. The wires were wet, pulsing like veins. The wall itself felt warm, alive. "This isn't a station," she said. "It's not even a zoo. It's a body." Reed backed toward the hallway, trying to stay calm. "We regroup, find the ship. We leave." But as they moved back, something was missing. The hallway had changed. It was longer now, twisting. And at the far end was another cage, open. Reed walked ahead slowly, scanning the floor. Inside the cage, something sat on the ground. Pale, still, a spacesuit. Folded neatly like clothes, boots side by side, gloves on top. Reed's suit, but Reed was still wearing his. He stepped forward, confused. Then the suit's visor turned toward him. Empty, but moving. Then something wet hit the floor behind them. Mason turned and saw it. Blood. Thick drops falling from the ceiling. They looked up and saw nothing. But the cages above were gone. And something was crawling on the ceiling in the dark. The blood kept dripping, thick drops falling one by one. Too slow, too steady. Each one landed with a soft splat on the floor, right beside the folded suit that looked exactly like Reed's. But Reed was standing there, alive, breathing, staring at the thing on the ground like it had stolen part of him. Mason aimed his flashlight at the ceiling, but the beam flickered and shook. The metal above was smooth. Too smooth, and then it moved. Just a ripple at first, like something slithering behind a sheet. Then a hand, thin, long, with fingers that bent the wrong way. It gripped the ceiling and pulled itself across without a sound. They couldn't see its face, just its shape. Tall, inhuman, watching. Reed backed away first, voice low. "We move. Now." No one argued. They followed the hallway again, even though it had changed. What used to be short now twisted like a maze, leading them through new doors they hadn't seen before. Every time they passed a window, the cages outside had changed places. Creatures they hadn't seen before stared out at them with blank faces. Some looked like floating worms with human eyes. Others had no faces at all. One cage held a thing that copied their shape, but moved a second slower than they did, like a delayed reflection. They stopped looking after that. It was safer not to. The hallway opened up into a large room filled with screens. Hundreds of them lined the walls, stacked in rows. Each one played silent footage from different cages. Reed stepped forward, trying to understand what he was seeing. On one screen, Mason was sleeping. Another showed Juno trying to fix a wire. A third showed Elia, but not now. This version of her was younger, crying in a bedroom, clutching a photo. "These are our lives," she said quietly. "They're watching everything. Not just now, but before." Mason's face turned pale. "How would they have that?" he asked. "How would they know?" Juno walked to a console and wiped dust from the glass. It lit up at her touch. Rows of names appeared. Human names. Some marked in red, some blinking, some marked as processed. Others said pending. She scrolled and found their names. All 4. Beside Reed's name, it said, "Duplicate under review." His hands shook as he stepped away from the screen. "They're not just keeping us in cages," Juno said. "They're making copies. Replacements." She tapped another screen. Security footage played. It showed the 4 of them walking, talking, but different. Their movements were stiff, eyes slower to blink, smiles that didn't match. "That's not us," Elia said. "That's what they're going to replace us with." Reed stepped back toward the hall but froze. A figure stood in the doorway. Not running, not hiding, just standing, watching. It was tall, too tall, head almost brushing the ceiling. Its skin was gray and thin, stretched tight over its bones. It had no mouth, no nose, just two deep black holes where eyes should be. It didn't move. It didn't blink. But they felt it. The way its stare pushed into their skulls like cold needles. "That's one of them," Mason whispered. "One of the Watchers." The lights dimmed. The creature stepped forward without making a sound. No footsteps, no breathing. The air grew thick, heavy, like trying to breathe through plastic. Then it stopped right outside the control room and simply turned, vanishing into the darkness like it had never been there. But when they looked back at the screens, one of the cages was now showing them in this exact room, right now, on loop. "They already put us in," Juno said. "We're already part of it." A sudden alarm began to flash. A loud siren echoed down the hall, not shrill but slow. One long, low note that made the walls vibrate. The room shook. The screens went black one by one. Then the floor beneath them opened. A square panel dropped, and Mason fell through first. He hit a slide that curved down like a tunnel, metal scraping against his suit. The others jumped after him without thinking. There was no other way out. They landed in a new space, darker, quieter. The walls here were stone, not metal, cold and wet. This part of the zoo wasn't for showing off creatures. It was for storing them. Rows of frozen pods lined the wall, each sealed with a thick glass cover. Inside every pod, a human. Some still moved, others didn't. Each one looked trapped mid-scream. They weren't asleep. They were paused. Juno stepped forward and wiped the frost off one of the glass covers. Behind it, a face. A man. Eyes wide open. Skin pale. Lips blue. He was still alive, but frozen in time. Then she saw his ID tag on the chest of his suit. Lieutenant Richard Hale, USSC, MIA 1992. She looked around. More tags, more names, dates going back decades. "This is where they keep them after they're done watching," she said. "They keep the real ones here and send the copies back." They didn't speak after that because behind them, another pod began to hiss. Its cover opened, and inside was Reed. But their Reed was standing right beside them. And this one opened its eyes. Both Reeds stared at each other. One breathing hard, eyes full of fear, the other silent, still lying inside the glass pod. Then the pod version blinked, once, slowly. Its lips moved, but no sound came out. Its hands twitched like it was waking from a bad dream. Juno grabbed the real Reed and pulled him back. "We need to leave now," she said, but her voice was low, almost flat. Something inside her had started to give up. She didn't say it, but they all felt it. This place was too big, too smart, too deep. It had layers they hadn't seen yet, and they were only falling deeper into the trap. They left the freezing pod room behind, following a narrow tunnel that smelled like wet air and metal. The walls changed again. No longer smooth, no longer clean. Now they looked stitched together, like a hallway made from skin, covered in tiny wrinkles and stretched tight across the bones of the station. Each step squished slightly. The floor felt soft, like walking across something alive. Elia stopped walking. Her hand went to the wall. She touched it, and it pulsed, like a heartbeat. That's when they found the next door. It was wide and round, with handprints smeared across the front. Some were small, some were way too large. The door opened without a sound. The room inside was dark except for a soft green glow coming from the ceiling. The light made everything look sick and fake. Along the walls were hooks. Hanging from those hooks were shapes, empty, soft, and loose. At first, they thought it was clothing. But then the smell hit them. Not dust, not mold. It was skin. Human skin. Each one was a full suit, peeled and cleaned like plastic. Arms, legs, faces, all empty. No bones, no blood. Just hanging like jackets at the back of a closet. Reed moved closer to the nearest one. The tag hanging from its foot said, Mason J. Finalized. He looked back. Mason was standing near the door, shaking his head slowly. That's not me, he whispered. But it was. The skin looked exactly like him. His arms, his chest, even a small scar near the eyebrow. And the face? It was his face. Just not moving. Not alive. Elia walked farther in and found another skin. This one had her name and next to it another with Juno's. But there were more. Dozens. Hundreds. Some names they didn't know. Some dated back to the 1960s. The deeper they walked, the older the skins looked. Some had cracked. Some were half melted. Some had their eyes still open, just staring. At the far end of the room was a raised platform. On it stood something they hadn't seen before. It wasn't an alien. It wasn't a machine. It was both. Tall, with arms made of wires and bones. Its head was round and smooth, like glass, but filled with a moving red mist. It stood beside a large table. On the table lay a skin that hadn't been emptied yet. It was still wet, still twitching. They didn't ask who it had been. The creature didn't look at them, but it knew they were there. It raised one arm and pointed to the wall. There, a message lit up in red letters. All copies ready for release. Below it, a timer began to count down. Zeros ago, 04:59. They didn't wait to see what happened when the timer hit 0. They ran, back through the skin room, back past the frozen pods, through halls that twisted and changed behind them. Every step felt like the station was trying to close in, shift its body, trap them in place. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. The smell of chemicals filled the air, and above all, the sound of the cages moving, one by one, like doors opening. When they reached the bay where their ship had landed, they saw it was different now. The Sycamore was open, lights on, but standing at the entrance, they were 3 figures. They looked like Reed, like Mason, like Juno. The copies were ready, and they were waiting. The real Juno didn't stop. She pushed forward and threw a small device from her belt onto the floor. Backup reactor, she said. Overload in 60 seconds. The clones tilted their heads. Their mouths began to move. Not speaking, smiling. A slow, wide grin that stretched too far. Too wrong. The team split. Mason charged the ship. Reed stayed back with Juno. Elia ran straight into the loading tunnel. The station began to shake. Lights went dark. Sparks flew from the walls. One of the clones lunged. It grabbed Reed's leg, pulled hard. He kicked, screamed, broke free, but he was bleeding. Juno shoved him into the ship and hit the door. Mason fired up the controls. Elia was still outside. Then they saw her, running down the hall, smiling. Too wide, too wrong. Juno didn't move. She knew. Elia didn't make it, she whispered. She hit launch. The ship shot up, through the fake sky, through layers of metal and dust and black. Behind them, the station began to fall apart. Pieces tore free, light burst through the cracks, and then everything vanished in silence. Hours passed. None of them spoke. The stars were real again. The space was quiet. But in the back of the ship, something made a sound. A slow breath, one they didn't recognize.